Hello and welcome to Catalyze Music Academy. My name is Zaak Kerstetter. So for the most part on the channel, I don't talk a lot about third-party plugins because I tend to use a lot of in-the-box Ableton Live devices for a lot of my synthesis and my sound design. But every once in a while, a third-party plugin makes its way into my life that is just too cool to pass up, that just changes the way fundamentally I make music. And today I want to talk about one of those plugins that did, in fact, just recently pop up in my life. So we're going to be talking about the Ruina by Noise Engineering. If you're not aware of Noise Engineering, they are really fantastic, mostly modular synthesizer hardware company. I've got a few of their modules in my rack and they're fantastic and I love them to death. They're just really interesting takes on oscillators and lots of different kinds of effects. So big shout out to them, they're fantastic. And recently they got into the software game and started releasing a few third-party plugins. There are 3 that are available for free right now. You can just go to their website, noiseengineering.com, make an account and just download them. There's the Vert and the Sync, which are really fantastic synthesizers, really cool, worth playing around with. But the one that really caught my attention is the Ruina. The Ruina is a distortion effect and it sounds amazing. It's easy to use and it's just fun to use, which I think is actually a really big factor into why I think it's so cool. So if you were into distortion, if you're into noise, if you're into grit, if you're into just demolishing sounds, check this out because this may be not only my favorite free distortion plugin, it may be my favorite distortion of any kind, free, paid, hardware, software, whatever. I think it's awesome. So that's what we're gonna talk about today. Before we dive into that, I do wanna let you know if you are enjoying the content on the channel, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, all that kind of stuff feeds the algorithm and helps me out quite a bit. You can also check out our Discord as well as the Patreon if you also want to support the channel that way. So diving right into it, we're going to start off with just the sine wave coming from wavetable. The Ruina is turned off right now, and then we're having that run into an oscilloscope. This is a free Max for Live oscilloscope that I downloaded off of maxforlive.com. Check it out. It's really handy for being able to see what's happening to your sound. So we just have a sine wave coming in there. I'm also going to hit the expand button right here to make this nice and big so we can kind of treat this like a plugin and see it really easily. So we're going to turn the Ruina, open this up, hit the expand button there again. Cool. So already you can hear it's just totally changing our sound. One of the things I also noticed when I first started playing around with this is there's a little bit of an envelope to it. So it doesn't come on all the way at once. It kind of shifts a little bit. You can kind of hear it changing over time. As far as I can tell, there's no way to change or control the envelope. It just adds that little bit of motion. So it really makes it sound a little bit more natural and it gives it a nice little nuance to the distortion. So one of the things I like about the Ruina is there are different kinds of distortion and we can mix and match them depending on kind of what we're looking for. So I'm going to kind of go through these one at a time a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and turn some of these down so we should get more of a sine wave when we're starting. Cool. So there's our sine wave. So the first 3 controls are pretty straightforward. Volume in, volume out. We just get gain staging, pretty handy for distortion. And then we get the blend control, which is effectively just the dry wet. So right now it's not doing a whole lot, but that's going to be our dry wet. We're going to keep this dry wet nice and high so we can really hear what's going on with the distortion. So to start off, we have this overdrive. This is going to just multiply the gain going in by up to 128 times. So you can get just a ridiculous amount of overdrive. Right now, we're not going to hear a huge difference. You'll definitely hear and see it kind of shift it into a square wave. This becomes more important once we add in the other kinds of distortion, and you'll really hear that a lot. Then we have this phase control. This is going to shift our left and right side, the phase of our left and right side, which gives us a nice bit more of like a stereo distortion, and you'll hear it and see it on the waveform as well. So it kind of shifts things around. We'll also come back to that once we get more things involved. And then we have our first kind of real distortion parameter. We have our wave folding. This is, I believe, based off of one of their hardware modules, and it just sounds really crazy. At the first little bit, gives it this nice little bit of grit, and then once you get to higher values, we're going to get crazy wave folding, and it's just going to sound really intense and really high frequency. You can see it folding. Pretty straightforward wave folder. Sounds cool. And let's mix in some overdrive with it. So just between those 2 parameters, we already get some pretty cool stuff just with the sine wave. The center control, we're going to come back to in a little bit. The saturator is going to be a multi-band saturator. There are 4 bands to it. And as you turn this down, it's going to emphasize more of the lower bands. And as you turn it up, it's going to emphasize more of the higher bands. With the sine wave, that's not going to be particularly interesting. So we're going to go to a saw wave real quick and just kind of see how this works. So more higher frequencies as we go up, and more frequencies on low frequencies as we go down. But it's a multi-band saturator. The center control is going to change the position of the different bands of your saturator. So if I move this around, you can hear it's kind of shifting the space between our different bands, or the lines between our different bands, which is kind of cool. Then we have the octavizer. This is going to be a full wave rectification distortion. I'm not entirely sure what that means, but it sounds cool. So as we turn this up, it's going to add like a little shifting to our waveform there. And then we have doom. This control is one of the things I think really stands out about this device. Not a lot of other distortions that I've seen have this. This is basically a sub-octave chorus. It's going to start to add like a little bit of shifting and motion and movement to your waveform. And then as you turn it up, it's going to start sounding like really kind of out of tune and really jarring and really awesome, I think, actually. So I'll start this low. We're going to turn this up. And you can already hear that kind of the chorusing there. It's like shifting the waveform around. And as you turn it up, it gets really kind of like unsettling. Which I think is really cool. It kind of reminds me of the band Boris. It sounds like they kind of use distortion like this sometimes. Then we have a buzz control. This is going to add some like extra high frequency content to your sound. Like that. So those are your main kind of ways to add distortion. You have buzz, doom, the octavizer, the saturator, the fold, and the overdrive. So lots of options, and just by mixing and matching them, again, let's go back to our sine wave. And we're just going to play around with it real quick just to kind of see what happens. Really easy to use, and like I said, all those options sound cool to me. So yeah, if you're into distortion, if you're into doom, just fantastic. All those work really, really well. On top of that, we have a few other extra options. We have things like a filter. There are 2 filter types. There is the cancella, which is a notch filter, and the bossio, I don't know. I'm gonna call it bossio, but I'm not sure how it's supposed to be said, which is a bandpass. So cancella is notch, bossio is bandpass. Let's start with the bossio. And we have a filter amount here. So as I turn this up, you can start to hear it's doing that bandpass filtering or notch filtering. And the other option we have for our filter is going to be whether we want it fixed or mobile. If it's fixed, the filter position doesn't move. But if we switch it to mobile, the center control that also controls the space around our different bands of our saturator also control the filter. So if we go back to our bandpass and I move this around, we can do a lot of filtering. Let's turn up the filter the filter dry wet all the way. We can do some pretty gnarly stuff that way. We switch over to our notch filter. Love that sound, fantastic. So cool. And then the very last option we have down here is the flow. This is the signal flow between all of our different kinds of distortion. So the UND goes fold, doom, octavizer, saturator. So that's the order of operations between our different kinds of distortion, which we already heard. Sounds like that. If I switch it to X, the X is going to be fold, saturate, octavizer, doom, which might sound different, might sound kind of similar. In this case, sounds pretty different. And then the OVR is going to be fold, doom, octavizer, saturate, and then fold again. This one sounds pretty crazy, I think. And I love all three. They all sound awesome. So I don't think I have any one of these that stands out as my favorite. They're all pretty cool and they're all worth checking out. So these parameters combined together just give you tons and tons of options. There are a few other things we can do in here. There are things like the nudge. This is going to randomize all your parameters, but only slightly. So if I click on this a bunch, you can see everything kind of jumps around a little bit and just moves around and changes tiny bits. And then there's the randomizer, which is just going to randomize everything significantly. This is fantastic. This is one of the reasons I love this device so much, is that there are so many cool combinations of different amounts of different distortion, and very few of them are not good. So if you ever feel bored and you don't want to do sound design and you're just like, I just want some distortion, I just want some that sounds cool, you can just hit the randomize button a bunch until you find something cool and then move on with your life. So I'm just going to hit this a few times. I have no idea what it'll sound like. In my experience, most of these have sounded great. Fantastic, I love them. And this is just a sine wave. I'm just playing the exact same note on a sine wave over and over again. A lot of these I think would be totally usable in any kind of like weird distortion devices. You can hit the reset button here, and then there's also a bunch of presets. I kind of knew I was going to love this device because of the names of the categories of presets. So there's like categories, which is basically your preset folders, and then presets down here. The names of the folders are Annihilation, Despair, Destruction, Flames, Haunted, Incineration, Pain, and Stab. Those are great names for distortion. So you can go through those, and there's lots of presets. A little bit of everything in there. Try them out, see what you like. I kind of like hitting the random button, but the presets are also really cool. And that's basically it. We have a few other options in here. We have like the configuration, which is basically like you can change the color, which is kind of cool. So I like the purple, so I'm gonna keep it purple. You can change the size of it. You can make it a little tiny, you can make it larger. And then the fire is basically like there's that little bit, like when I move the thing around, it kind of follows it, which is kind of cool. And then of course we can also MIDI map it. So it has default MIDI mappings here for different CCs to control different parameters. You can change these if you want. I've also found it's really handy that if we go down into the device itself, if we hit this triangle, all of these parameters are already built in down here. So if we wanted to change the dry wet, we could do so directly from live. This also makes it really easy to control from another device like the LFO device, for example. So one of the downsides of this plugin is that there's no modulation built into it, right? We can't make these move up and down automatically. However, we can pair it up with something like the LFO, hit the map button, map it to the blend, which is the dry wet, and then I can control that moving up and down. And just start automating it however I want, using LFOs, envelopes, all the kind of other modulation that I already have access to in live. So lots of options there for moving things around and modulating them. That's kind of the idea here. Like I said, fantastic device. If you enjoyed any of those sounds that you just heard, it was just a sine wave running through this. If you wanted to get even more creative with it, you could run some vocals through this. You could run lots of different kinds of sound design through this. Be careful with the dry wet, because even a tiny bit of dry wet on this thing does a lot. But if you like really over the top, really just kind of like gritty, distorted sounds, I'm having trouble thinking of anything that comes anywhere even close to the diversity and the quality of sounds this makes. Plus, it just is really fun to use. The last thing I'm going to do real quick is just as an example, just kind of show you other things you can use this on. I've also found that the Ruina on drums is great. I love it. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take this drum beat. This is just a sample library drum beat that I found. Sounds like that. If I turn on the Ruina. All of a sudden we have something that's like totally different. We're basically, we're death grips now. And then we can just keep hitting the random button and see what it comes up with. I like that one a lot. I like that one a lot too. It's like, it's hard to come up with bad combinations almost. That one may be the best one yet. So yeah, so try it on drums, try it on like, put on a kick drum. If you just want like the most over the top kick drum possible, toss this on a kick drum and it's really hard to go wrong with it. So hopefully you can tell how excited I am about this device. Like I said early in the video, when a device makes me inspired to just sit down and just make stuff, that to me is the sign of a really well-designed plugin, piece of gear, whatever it is. And this is definitely the most excited I've been about a piece of gear in a very long time. And it's free. Check it out. Let me know what you think in the comments. See for yourself. But that's going to be it for this video. Hopefully that's informative. Hopefully that gives you some inspiration to try some different things and go nuts with that distortion. So that's going to be it. Thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you again in another video.